Okay, I think the ads are over. And I'm not all there. Why is my model already not responding? What the heck? You know, it's going to be a great stream when I start out and my model's frozen. Ah, there we go. I had to restart it on my phone. But welcome in. Hope you've had a good week. I think I've only got one or two more stories I can legally read out of this book. And then I might read one and then give a preview of what I've been working on. So I may do that. So let me go ahead and skip over to where I've been telling the stories for this Friday Fright. I did enjoy building this scene. And, well, I wish I could have animated it a little bit better, but I'm not that great of an animator. It sounds like my ring sword's acting up. That's crazy. There we go. Now I'm really not all there. Not that that's ever really been anything out of the ordinary for me. I like my rain. I like my fire pit. I like my miscellaneous schools floating around behind me. As I said, I don't have many more stories out of this book I can read that are public domain. It really is. So I found the fire pit, then I animated it. I wouldn't mind getting the fire pit for real, because it is a really cool fire pit. But I saw it set up in a store, and I thought, you know, that would be a cool fire pit for my scene, so I took a picture. I didn't trim the edges down right because it's still showing some of the white, because I did make it completely transparent, and then I built the fire into it and then made it a GIF animation after that, so it turned out fairly good. And if I'd had a little bit, well, if I'd put a little bit more work into it, I would have actually had light coming out of it, but shadows are harder to build. As opposed to the things that keep popping up behind me. Let's pop the chat window off real quick, just so you can see. Okay, so if I spray painted a blur, then I made it a figure, and that's the one that comes out on the left. Okay, get the chat window back up. Helps me see what's going on, at least. Now, it's interesting that the story I found that I'm going to read tonight was actually written by a man, but he was using... Well, thank you. I didn't do too many frames on them, but I was having to do 2 different sets of animations and move them both, and something I probably could have taken more time on, but I think I did this in maybe an hour or 2, just out of boredom. But I kept seeing the animations of ghosts peeking out from behind trees and thought, you know, I could do something like that. So I made my own animations. What's really bad is I was using 20-year-old software. I think I'm using... It's, what am I using? A copy of Image Ready from 2000. Plus I'm also using Photoshop 6, so... It, you know, easy animations to do. I just had to draw everything in Photoshop and pull it over to Image Ready, then animate it. That said, I think it turned out fairly good. I mean, I can do better, but I don't want to get beyond the campy part of my streams. It's like I can hear the thunder, but I'm not hearing the rain. That's... So I can't hear the campfire at all. But definitely hearing the rainstorm, which is nice. Rainstorms are always somewhat calming. Of course, I haven't completely finished the other scene I'm working on, but I've been too busy doing stuff for the thing I might promote tonight, if anything else. I've been working on a playlist of public domain horror movies that I've set up a drive-in theater to watch them in. Which looks like this. Oh, where is it? Screen. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I built a drive-in. But anyway. Fix my model again. Ooh, I'm separating. Let's say I essentially made myself a ghost so I can, you know, split things up. It's like if I really wanted to make people's eyes hurt, I would move myself over just a few pixels. But then I wouldn't be able to focus on anything. But anyway, the author of the story I was going to read tonight is a Scottish writer named William Sharp, but he wrote the story under a completely different name. He wrote it under Fiona MacLeod. Because apparently in the late 1800s, pagans were considerably more open-minded than the rest of the world. And they said that, men and women should be equal. I'd say he wrote an entire article on gender equality for a review. So, seems like an interesting person. And he wrote under the Fiona MacLeod name for a decade, and continued telling people that it was a real person. Apparently had his sister write letters in her handwriting to continue the charade, which is just really cool. He would write something, have his sister rewrite it, and turn it in under the other name. Just because male and female handwriting was apparently that different. Ooh, this one does look fun. I will say that according to the prologue for this story, it contains a few examples of the more fearsome aspects of the Fae. There's a serpent woman and a female vampire fairy. So it could be fun. The Bhean-Nimhir and the Bansis. Oh, Balbansis. It'll be fun saying these. Hopefully I won't mispronounce everything. So this is By the Yellow Moon Rock by Fiona MacLeod. Rory MacAlpin the Piper had come down from Strath to St. Bride's Eve for the great wedding at the farm of kinsman Donald McAllister. Every man and woman, every boy and girl who could by hook or by crook get to the big dance at the barns was there to be seen, but no one that danced till he or she could dance no more had a wearer joy than Rory with the pipes. Reels and strathspeys that everyone knew gave way at last to wilder strathspeys that no one had ever heard before. And why should they, since it was a hill wind and the mountain torrent and the roar of pines that got loose in Rory's mind, and he not knowing it any more than a leaf that sails in the yellow wind. He played with magic and pleasure, and he never looked handsomer, in his grandeur of clothes, and his ruddy hair aflame with the torchlight, and his big blue eyes shining with a lifting, shifting fire. But those who knew him best saw that he was strangely subdued for Rory MacAlpin, or at least that he laughed and shouted in the rare intervals when he was not playing, and there were 2 other pipers present to help the master, more by custom than by from his heart. "What is it, Rory?" said Diabrog to him, with a heavy reel wherein he had nearly killed a man by sweeping upon, nigh flattening him against the wall. "Nothing, foster brother dear. It's nothing at all. Fling away, Diabrog. You're doing fine." Later, old Dianad took him aside to bid him refresh himself from the brew of rum and lemon she had made. There was spice and flavor of old brandy. Bara punch, she called it. Then asked him if he had sorrow at the back of his heart. Just this, he said in a whisper, that Rory McAlpin's Fae. Fae, my lad, and what's that for? For sure, I'm thinking it's Fae of the good drinking you have had all day, and now here I'm spoiling you more. Hush, woman, I'm not speaking of what comes with a drop of the bad, but I had a dream. I had a powerful, strange dream for sure. I had it a month ago, and I had it the night before I left Strathranda, and I had it this very day in the day. I was laying asleep and off the kindness that I had since I'd bought into Strathnul. Aye, and what's that dream be now? It's a strange dream, sure, Donald McAllister. You know the great yellow stone that rises out of the heather on the big moor of Dalmanach, and a mile or more beyond Tom the Shea? Aye, the moon rock they call it. It fell out of the skies, they say. The yellow moon rock, aye, yellow moon rock, that's its name, for sure. Well, the first time I dreamed of it, I saw it standing fair yellow in the moonshine. There was a moorfowl sitting on it, and it flew away. And when it flew away, I saw that it was a ptarmigan, and she was as clean brown as though her summer and not midwinter, and I thought that strange. How did you know it was a ptarmigan? It might have been a northern or a hoots woman. How do I know it's weather fine when it's day or night? Well, as I was saying, I thought it strange, but I hadn't turned over the thoughts on its back before it was gone like the shadow of Pewit. And I was standing before me the beautifulest woman I ever saw in my life. I've had sweethearts here and sweethearts there, and Diamond Nick Thomond, and long ago I loved the lass who died, Sean McNeil. But not one of these, no sweet Sean herself, was like the woman I saw in my dreams, who had more beauty upon her than them all together, or than all the women in Strathallan or Strathranda. Have some more barra punch, Rory, said McAllister dryly. Wheest, you old fool, begging your pardon for the same. She was as white as new milk, and her eyes were as dark as the two black pools below an Nora Lynn, and her hair was long and wavy as the shadows of a willow in the wind. And she sat and she sang, and if I could be remembering that song now, it's my fortune I'd be making. It's that quick. And where is she? Why, on the moon rock for sure. And if I hadn't been a good Christian, I'd have bowed down before her. Because of that big stare out of her eyes she had, and the beauty of her and all. And what's more, by the black stone of Iona, and I hadn't been a God-fearing man, I'd have run to her and put my arms around her and kissed the honey lips of her till she cried out, "For Lord's sake, Roy McAlpin, leave me!" It's, well, you seen that you were only in a dream, Roy McAlpin. At another time, Roy would have smiled at that, but now he just stared. She said no word, he added, but lifted a bit of hollow wood and thick reed, and then all at once she whispered, "I'm Bonnie St. Bride of the Mantle," and with that she began to play, and it was the finest, sweet, gentle little music in the world. But a big fear was on me, and I just turned and ran. No man will ever call you a fool against my face, Roy McAlpin. I never had the thought that you had so much sense. She didn't let me run so easy, for a grey bitch went yapping and yowling at my heels, and just as I was tripping and felt the bad hot breath of the beast on my throat, I woke, and were covered with sweat. And you've dreamed that dream 3 times. I've had it 3 times, and this very day, to the stones be it said. Now, you're a wise woman, Diana McAllister, but can you tell me what the dream means? If you're really Fae, I'm thinking I can, Rory McAlpin. Sorry. Ow. It's a true thing, himself knows it. And what do you feel? I'm fey with the beauty of that woman. Thank you. There's good women with the fair looks on them in plenty, Rory, and if you prefer them bad, you need to wear out a new shoon before you find them. I'm fair with the beauty of that woman. I'm fair with the beauty of that woman that had the name of bride to her. Ned McAllister looked at him with troubled eyes. When she took up the reed, did you see anything that frightened you? I had a bit of fright when I saw a big black adder slip about the moon rock as the parson flew off, and I had the other half of the fright when I thought the woman lifted the adder, and it was only wood or a reed. For ain't I telling you about the gentle, sweet music I heard? Old Dinah hesitated, then looking about her to see that no one was listening, she spoke in a whisper. And you've been fey since the hour because of the beauty of that woman. Because of the sore beauty of that woman. And it's not the drink. No, Dinah McAllister. You women are always for hurting the feelings of my drink. It's not the innocent drink, I'm telling you. No, for sure. No, it's not the drink. Then I'll tell you what it means, Rory McAlpin. It wasn't Holy Saint Bride. I know yet, Miss McAllister. That was the face of Bhean-Nimhir you saw. The face of Bhean-Nimhir in this Saint Bride's night. And as on this night of nights she can be seen, and beware of that seeing, Rory McAlpin. The Bhean-Nimhir, the serpent woman, the daughter of Eivor, muttered Rory. Where now have I heard tell of the daughter of Eivor? And then he remembered the old tale of the Isles, and his heart sank, because the tale was of a woman of the underworld who could suck the soul right out of a man through his lips, and send it to slavery among the people of ill will, whom there is no call to speak of by name. And if she had any spite or any hidden wish that was not for her knowing, she could put the lightness in the fly's bite in the hollow of his throat, and take his life out of his body, and nip it, and it stings until it was no longer alive, until that went away on the wind that she chased with screams and laughter. Some say she is the wife of the Amandu, the dark fool, murmured Dinah, crossing herself furtively, for even the dialogue and its Protestantry now. But Rory was not listening. He sat intent, for he heard music, a strange music. Leonard shook him by the shoulder. Wake up, Rory, man. You'll be having sleep on you another minute. Just then a loud calling for the piper was heard, and Rory went back to the dancers. Soon his pipes were heard, and the reel swung to that good, glad music, and his face lighted up as he strode to and fro, or stopped and tip-tapped away with his right foot, while drone and chanter all but burst with the throng of sound in them. But suddenly he began to play a reel that nigh maddened him, and his own face was wrought so that dialogue came up and signed to stop, and then asked him what in the name of Black O'Donnell was he playing. Rory laughed foolishly. Oh, for sure, it's just a new reel of my own. I call it The Reel of Ivor's Daughter, and it's a good reel, too, although it's Rory McAlpin says so. Who is she, and what's Ivor will you be speaking of? Oh, ask the Dan Vassou. It's he who would know that. No, I will not be naming it that name, sure. I will instead call it the Serpent Reel. Come now, Rory, you've played enough, and your wrist's not tired with the chatter, sure. It must be with lifting the drink to your lips. It's time to, these lads and lasses be off. No, they're wanting to bring in the grang of the day. St. Bride's Day. They'll be singing the hymn for that grang. Bride de Trosses Moon de Christo. Not they, if dialogue has a say to it. Come now, have a drink with me, for your own foster brother, and then lie down and sleep it off, and God's good blessing be on you. Whether it was Dalabrog's urgency, or the thought of good drink he would have, and he was a terrible thirst on him after that lung-bursting reel of his. Rory went away quietly with the host, and was on a mattress on the floor of a big empty room and snoring hard long before the other pipes ceased plugging, or the dancers flung their panting breaths against the frosty night. An hour after midnight, Rory woke with a start. He had a spate of a headache on, he murmured, as he rose half up and struck a match against the floor, when he saw that he was still in his brave gear and had laid down, just as he was, and also remembered all that happened and the place he was in, and wondered what had wakened him. Now that he thought of it, he heard music, yes, for sure, music, for all that it was so late, and after everyone had gone home. What was it? It was not any song of his own, nor any air he had. He must have dreamed that it came across the lonely moors and had a laugh at the moan with a sudden cry in it. He was cold. The window was open. That was a stupid, careless thing of Donald McAllister to do, and he, sober as he always was, though he could drink deep, on a night of frost like this, death could slip in on the back of the shadow and give his whisper in your ear before you could rise for the stranger. He stumbled to his feet and closed the window. Then he lay down again, and was nearly asleep, and was confused between the old prayer that rose in his mind like a sunken spar above a wave, and whether to take window sheen, a packet of great thick Sabbath peppermints, or a good heavy twist of tobacco, and some strange delightsome memory of Donald McAllister's brew of rum and lemons with a touch of old brandy in it, when again he heard that little, wailing, fantastic air, and sat up with the sweat on his brow. The sweat was not there because of the little thin music he heard, and it was the same, too, as he had heard before, but because the window was wide open again, and through the room was so heavy with silence that the pulse of his heart made a noise like a jumping rat. Rory sat, still as though he were dead, staring at the window. He could not make out whether the music was faint because it was so far away, or because it was played feebly, like a child's playing, just under the sill. He was a big, strong man, and he leaned and wavered like a flame of a guttering candle in that slow journey of his from the mattress to the window. He could hear the playing now quite well. It was like a beautiful, sweet song of Pride Bihalak Miepse Curiosa, but with a holy peace out of it, and with a little evil hidden laugh flapping like a wing against the blessed name of Christ's foster mother. But when it sounded under the window, it suddenly was far, and when it was far, the glass-circled pit light would be like his ear, like a skiffling bat. When he looked out, he felt a cold night lie in his skin, and he could not see because he saw too well. He saw the shores of the sky filled with dancing lights, and the great lighthouse of the moon sending a white foam stream across the delicate hazes of the frost, which were too thin to be seen, and only took the sharp edges off the stars, or sometimes splintered them into a sudden dazzle. He was like a man in a sailless, rudderless boat, looking at the skies because he lay face upwards and dared not stoop to look into the dark, slipping water alongside. He saw, too, the horn-like curve of Tom Nisha Black against the blueness, and the inky line of Daleth Moor beyond the plumy mass of Dalabot Woods, and the near meadows where the leverets jumped squealing, and then the bare garden with ragged gooseberry bushes like scraggy hunched sheep, and at last the white gravel walk bordered with the withered roots of pinks and southernwood. Then he looked from all the great things and all the little things to the ground beneath the window. There was nothing there. There was no sound. Not even far away could he hear the faint, devilish music, at least. Rory shut the window and went back to his mattress and lay down. "By the sun and wind," he exclaimed, "a man gets fear on him nowadays, like the cold and dead that comes a thaw." Then he lay and whistled a blithe catch. For sure he thought he would rise at dawn and drown that thirst of whatever was first in hand. Suddenly, he stopped whistling, and on the uplift of a lilting turn, in a moment the room was full of old silence again. Rory turned his head slowly. The window was wide open. A sob died in his throat. He put his hands to his dry mouth, and the back of it was as wet with sweat as his face. White and shaking, he rose and walked steadily to the window. He looked out and down. There was no one. Nothing. He pulled the ragged cane chair to the sill and sat there, silent and hopeless. Soon big tears fell one by one slowly down his face. He understood now. His heart filled with sad, bitter grief and brimmed over, and that was why the tears fell. It was his hour that had come and opened the window. He was cold, and as faint as hunger and heavy with thirst as though he had not put a glass to his lips or a bit to his mouth for days instead of hours. But for all that, he did not feel ill, and he wondered and wondered why he was to die so soon. And he was so well made and handsome and unmarried, too. Now with girls as eager to have him as trouts for a mayfly. After a time, Rory began to dream of that great beauty that had troubled his dreams, and while he thought of it, and the beauty still sweet wonder of the woman she whom had been sitting on the moonshine of the yellow rock, he heard again the laughing, crying, fallen lilt of that near and far song. But now it troubled him no more. He stooped and swung himself out of the window, and at the noise of his feet on the gravel a dog barked. He saw a white hound running swiftly across the pasture beyond him. It was gone in a moment, so swiftly did it run. He heard a second bark, and knew that it came from the old deerhound in the kennel. He wondered where the white hound he had seen came from, and where it was going, and in the silent and white and swift as a moonbeam, with the head low and a full sleuth. He put his hand on the sill and climbed into the room again, lifted the pipes which he and David McAllister had thrown beside the mattress, and again, but stealthily, slipped out of the window. Rory walked to the deerhound and spoke to it. The dog whimpered, but barked no more. The piper walked on, and had gone about a score of yards when the old hound threw back his head and gave a growl and howl upon howl, long and mournful. The cry went from stead to stead, miles and miles away, the farm dogs answered. Perhaps it was to drown their noise that Rory began to finger his pipes, and at last let a long drone out like a great humming chalk furrow its first blue frosty stillness of the night. The crofters at Moor Edge heard his pibroch, and he walked swiftly along a road that leads to Dalmach Moor. Though some thought it was uncanny, some that one of the pipers had lost his way and had made an early start, one or two wondered if Rory McAlpin were already on the move, like a hare that could not be long for one from. The last house was the gatekeeper's, Dalmouth Toll, as it was still called. Duncan Grant related next day that he was awakened by the thrill of the pipes, and knew them to be Rory McAlpin's by the noble, masterly fashion in which the droning chanter came out of their music, and also because that music was the strong, wild, fearsome reel that Rory had played last at the Byres, that which he had called the reel of the daughter of Ivor. Aye, that, he added, each time he told the tale. It rose and opened the window, and called to Rory McAlpin. "Rory," I cried, "is that you?" "Aye," he said, stopping short of giving the pipes a lilt. "Aye, it's me, and no other, Duncan Grant." "I thought ye would be sleeping sound at Ballygog." But Rory made no answer to that, and walked on. I called him in English. "Dinna go out to the moor, Rory. Come in, man, and have a cup of hot porridge and a mouthful with them." But he never turned his head, and it was dark and cold. I said to myself that doited fool must gang in their aim gate, and so turned in and went to my bed again, though I hadn't a wink long as I could hear Rory playing. But Duncan Grant was not the last man who heard the reel of the daughter of Ivor. A mile or more across the Dalmouth Moor, the heather is at forked roads. One way is the cartway to Belnar, the other is the drover's way to Tonnashi, and the hill countries beyond. It is up this, a mile from the fork, that the yellow moonrock rises like a great fang out of the purple lips. Some say it is of granite, and some marble, and that it is old crumblock of forgotten days. Others that it is an unknown substance, a meteoric stone believed to have fallen from the moon. Not near the moonrock itself, but 50 yards or more away, or perhaps more ancient still, there are a group of 3 lesser fang-shaped boulders on the trap, one with illegible runing writing on its signs. These are familiar to some as the Stannon stones, to others who have the Gaelic, the stone men, or simply the stones, the stones of Dalgmaloth. None knows anything certain of this ancient crumble, though it is held by the scholars to be of Pictish times. Here a man known as Peter Lamont, though commonly as Peter the Tinkerer, an idle, homeless vagrant, had taken shelter from the hill wind which had blown earlier in the night, and had heaped a bed of dry bracken. He was asleep when he heard the wail and hum of the pipes. He sat up in the shadow of one of the stones. By the stars he saw that it was still the black of the night, and that dawn would not be astir for 3 more hours or more. Who could be piping the pipes in that lonely place at that hour? The man was superstitious, and his fears were heightened by his ignorance of what the unseen piper played, and Peter the Tinker prided himself on his knowledge of pipe music, and by the strangeness of it. He remembered, too, where he was. There was not 1 in 100 who would lie at night by the Stannon stones, and he himself had driven to it only by weary heaviness and the fear of death from the unsheltered cold. But not even that would have made him lie near the moonrock. He shivered as memories of wild stories rose ghastly one after the other. The music came nearer. The tinker crawled forward and hid behind the stone next to the path, and cautiously, under a tuft of bracket, stared in the direction whence the sound came. He saw a tall man striding along in full Highland gear, with his face death-white in the moonshine, and his eyes glazed like those of a Leicestered salmon. It was not till the piper was close that Lamont recognized him as Rory MacAlpin. He would have spoken, and gladly, in that lonely place, to say nothing of the curiosity that was on him, had it not been for those glazed eyes and that set, death-white face. The man was fey. He could see that. It was all he could do not to leap away like a rabbit. Rory MacAlpin passed him and played till he was close to the moonrock, and then he stopped and listened, leaning forward through straining his eyes to see in the shadows. He heard nothing. He saw nothing, apparently. Slowly he waved his hand across the heather. Then suddenly the piper began rapidly talking. Peter the Tinker could not hear what he said, perhaps because his own teeth chattered from the fear of what that was on him. Once or twice Rory stretched his arms as though he were asking something, as though he were pleading. Suddenly he took a step or 2 forward, and a loud, shrill voice cried, "By holy Saint Bride, let there be peace between us, white woman!" "I do not fear you, white woman, because I am too the race of Ivor. My father's father was the son of Ivor MacAlpin, the son of Ivor the Dark, the son of Ivor Honeymouth, the son of Rudroth, the son of Radeth the Red, of the straight, unbroken line of Ivor the King. I will do you no harm. You will do me no harm the same, white woman. This is the day of bride, the day for the daughter of Ivor. It is Rory MacAlpin who is here, of the race of Ivor. I will do you no harm, and you will do me no harm. Sure, now it was you who sang. It was you who sang it. It was you who played it. It was you who opened my window. It was you who came to me in a dream, daughter of Ivor. It was you who put your beauty upon me. Sure, it was a beauty that is my death, and I am hungering and thirsting for it. Having cried thus, Rory stood, listening, like a crow on a furrow when it sees the wind coming. The tinker, trembling, crept a little nearer. There was nothing, no one. Suddenly, Rory began singing in a loud, chanting, monotonous tone. Found la bride, la next head la cronk, Chablin mis de nigler in Hemir, se chadi lima de home. Which means, today the bride, the daughter of Ivor, shall come to the knoll. I will not touch the daughter of Ivor, nor shall the daughter of Ivor touch me. Then bowing low, with fantastic gestures, with a sweep of his plaid, making a shadow like a flying cloud, he sang again. The bride nam brigban, tig regan ran of tomb, Kapapa misle stein or regan ran, se chan na blon and regan ran rium. Which means, on the day of the bride of the fair locks, the noble queen will come from the hill. I will not molest the noble queen, nor will the noble queen molest me. And I too, nigger him here, he cried in a loud voice once more shrill and more plaintive yet, will be doing now what your own great forebear did, when he made tabula sesquistrea to you, so that neither he nor his seed forever should die to you. And I too, Radmuth MacDonald MacAlpin, will make a offering and incense. And with that, Rory stepped back and lifted his pipes and flung them at the base of the yellow moon rock, where they caught on a jagged spar and burst with a great wailing screech that made the hair rise on the head of Peter the Tinker, where he crouched, sick with white fear. That for my tablecross, Rory again cried, though he were calling to the multitude. And as I've no choice, and am only in since I have to smoke out of my pipe, take the pipe and my tobacco too, and it's all the smoke I have, and I'm ever like to have now. A good incense is too good of any other, daughter of Ivor. Suddenly Peter Lamont heard a thin, strange, curling, twisting bit of music, so sweet for all its wildness that cold and hunger went below his heart. It grew louder, and he shook with fear. But when he looked at Rory MacAlpin, he saw him springing to and fro in a dreadful reel, and snapping his fingers and flinging his arms up and down like flails. He could stand no more, but with a screech rose and turned across the heather, and fluttered and fell and fell and fluttered like a wounded snipe. He lay still once, after a bad fall, for his breath was like the thistledown blown this way and above his head. It was on the heathery knoll, and he could see the moonrock, yellow-white in the moonshine. The savage lilt on the jaggling air still rang in his ears, with never a sweetness in it now, though when he listened it grew fair and lightsome, and put a spell of joy and longing in him. But he could see nothing of Rory. He stumbled to his knees and stared. There was something on the road. He had heard a noise of men struggling, but all he saw was Rory MacAlpin swaying and swinging, now up, now down, and then at last the piper was on his back in the road, and tossing like a man in a fit, and screeching in a dreadful voice, Let me go! Let me go! Take your lips off my mouth! Take your lips off my mouth! Then abruptly, there was no sound. Only a dreadful silence, till he heard the rush of feet, and he heard the heather sprigs break and crack, and something went past him like a flash of light. With a scream he hung himself down on the heather knoll, and ran like a driven hare till he came to the white road beyond the moor, and just as dawn was breaking, he fell in a heap by the byre edge of Dalmouth Hole, and there Duncan Grant found him an hour later, white and senseless still. Neither Duncan Grant nor anyone else believed Peter Lamont's tale, but at noon the tinker led a reluctant few to the yellow moonrock. The broken pipes still hung on the jagged spar at the base. Half on the path and half on the heather was the body of Rory MacAlpin. He was all but naked to the waist, and his plaid and jacket were torn and ragged as Lamont's own. and the bits were scattered far and wide. His lips were blue and swelled. In the hollow of his hairy, twisted throat was a single drop of black blood. "It's an adder's bite," said Duncan Grant. And none spoke. Well now. I really like that one. And I really need to brush up on my Scottish. Oh. Dang. I really need to brush up on my Scottish. Glad that the translations for the song, though. That made it a little bit more easy. And the leap has escaped. Ouch. I'm hearing weird sounds. But I'm not hearing bagpiping. Nor regular piping. So I guess it's a good sign. I think I'll read one more for the evening. That is, unless there's any objections. I'm sure when I post this on YouTube, people are going to complain about my Scottish. But I was doing my best. The next story from 1924. After Dark in the Playing Fields by M.R. James. The hour was late and the night was fair. I had halted not far from the sheep's bridge, and was thinking about the stillness, only broken by the sound of the weir, when a loud, tremulous hoot just above me made me jump. It is always annoying to be startled, but I have a kindness for owls. This one was evidently very near. I looked about for it. There it was, sitting plumply on a branch about 12 feet up. I pointed my stick at it and said, "Was that you?" "Drop it," said the owl. "I know it ain't only a stick, but I don't like it." "Yes, of course that's with me. Do you suppose it would be if I weren't?" "We will take the read of sentences by surprise." I lowered my stick. "Well," said the owl, "what about it? If you will come out here in midsummer evening, like what it is, what did you expect?" "I beg your pardon," I said. "I should have remembered. May I say that I think myself very lucky to have met you tonight. I hope you have time for a little talk." "Well," said the owl ungraciously, "I don't know if it matters so particular tonight. I've had my supper when it happens, and if you ain't too big long over it, Suddenly broke into a loud scream, flapping its wings furiously, it bent towards and clutched its perch tightly, continuing to scream. Plainly, something was pulling hard on it from behind. The strain had relaxed abruptly, and the owl nearly fell over, and then whipped around, roughing up all over, and made a vicious dab at something unseen to me. "Oh, I'm sorry," said a small, clear voice in a solicitous tone. "I made sure it was loose. I hope it didn't hurt you." "Didn't hurt me," said the owl bitterly. "Of course it's hurt me. Well, you know it, you young infidel. The feather was no more loose than... Oh, if I could get at you. Now I shouldn't wonder if you've been thrown about off balance. Why can't you let a person sit quiet for 2 minutes or at a time without you coming up and creeping up and... Well, you've done it this time. Anyway, I shall straight to the headquarters and... Funny, I was now addressing an empty air. "What have you got to now? Oh, it is too bad, that is." "Dear me," I said. I'm afraid this isn't the first time you've been annoyed in this way. May I ask exactly what happened?
You may ask,
said the owl, looking narrowly about as I spoke.
but it'd take me until the later end of next week to tell you. Fancy coming and pulling out someone's tail feather. It hurt me something cruel, it did. And for what? I should like to know. Answer me that. What's the reason for it?
All that occurred to me that was to murmur. The clamorous owl that nightly hoots and wonders at our quaint spirits. I hardly thought the point would be taken, but the owl said sharply,
What's that? Yes, you needn't repeat it. I heard. And I'll tell you what's at the bottom of it, and you mark my words.
It bent towards me and whispered, with many nods of its round head.
Pride. Standoffishness, that's what it is. Come not near me, fairy queen.
This he said in a bitter tone of contempt.
Oh dear no, we ain't good for the likes of them. Another noted time out of mind of the best singers in the fields, ain't it so?
Well, I said doubtfully enough, I'd like to hear you very much, but, some people think a lot of thrushes and nightingales and so on. You must have heard of that, haven't you? And then perhaps, of course, I don't know, perhaps your style of singing isn't exactly what they think suitable to accompany their dancing, huh?
I should kindly hope not, said the owl, drawing himself up. Our families never give in to dancing, and never won't neither. Why, whatever you are thinking of, it went off in a rising nipper, a pretty thing it would be for me to be set there hiccuping at them.
It stopped and looked harshly all around. It's up and down, and then continued in a louder voice.
Them little ladies and gentlemen, if it ain't suitable for them, it sure ain't suitable for me, and
again the temper rose.
If they expect me to ever say a word because they're dancing and carrying on with their foolishness, they're very much mistook, and so I tell 'em.
From what had passed before, I was afraid this was an impudent line to take, and I was right. Hardly had the owl given its last emphatic nod when 4 small, slim forms dropped from a bough above, and in a twinkling some sort of grass rope was thrown on the body of the unhappy bird, and it was borne off through the air, loudly protesting in the direction of the fellow's pond. Splashes and gurgles and shrieks of unfeeling laughter were heard as I hurried up. Something darted away over my head, and as I stood peering over the bank of the pond, which was all in the commotion, a very angry and disheveled owl scrambled heavily up on the bank, and stopping near my feet and shook itself, and flapped and hissed for several minutes without saying anything I should care to appear. Glaring at me, it said eventually, with a grim suppressage of rage in its voice that I had such hastily drew back a step or two.
That said they is very sorry, and they mistook me for a duck. If all ain't sorry enough to make anyone to go regular district from their mind and tear everything to flinders for miles around.
So carried away was its passion, it began to process at once by rooting up a large beakful of grass, which, alas, got into its throat, and the choking was resulted made me feeling afraid that it would break a vessel. But paroxysm was mastered, and the owl sat up, winking and breathless, but intact. Some expression of sympathy seemed to be required, yet as I had chary of offering it, for its present state of mind I felt the bird might interpret the best meant phrase for a fresh insult. So we stood looking at each other without speech for a very awkward minute. And then came to a diversion. First the thin voice of the pavilion clock, then the deeper sound from the castle quadrangle, then Lupton's tower drowning the curfew tower by its nearness.
What's that? Said the owl, suddenly and hoarsely. Midnight, I should think,
said I, with a recourse to my match.
Midnight? Cried the owl, evidently much startled. And me too wet to fly a yard. Here, pick me up and put me in the tree. Don't. I climb on your leg, and don't you ask me to be that twice. Quick now.
I obeyed. Which tree do you want?
Why, my tree to be sure, over there.
It nodded towards the wall. All right, Baldclack's tree, do you mean? I said, meaning to run that distance.
How should I know what silly names you call it? The one that's at the door in it. Go faster. They'll be coming in another minute.
Oh, what's the matter? I asked as I ran, clutching the white creature, and much afraid of stumbling and coming over it with the long grass.
You'll see fast enough, said the selfish bird. You just let me get on the tree. I shall be all right.
I suppose it was, for it scrambled very quickly up the trunk, and with its wings spread and disappeared into the hollow without a word of thanks. I looked round, not very comfortably. The curfew tower was still playing St. David's tune and the little chime that follows for the third and last time, but the other bells had not finished what they had to say, and now there was silence, and again the restless changing whir was the only thing that broke. No, that emphasized it. Why had the owl been so anxious to get into hiding? That, of course, was what exorcised me now. Whatever or whoever was coming, I was sure that this was no time for me to cross to the open field. I should do my best to disassemble my presence by staying on the darker side of the tree, and that is what I did. All this took place some years ago before summertime came in. I do sometimes go into the playing fields at night still, but I come in before true midnight. And I find I do not like the crowd after dark, for example, at the 4th of July fireworks. You see, no, you do not see, but I see such curious faces of people to whom they belong flit about so oddly, and often at your elbow when you least expect it, or coming close to your face, as if they were searching for someone, who may be thankful, I think, they did not find him. Where do they come from? Why, some, I think, out of the water, and some out of the ground. They look like that, but I am sure it is best to take no notice of them, and not to touch them. Yes, I certainly prefer the daylight population of playing fields to that which comes after dark. Ouch. I really expected to have more to read tonight. I'm going to have to find a different book to use tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow. Next week. Because those are the last of the public domain stories in this book. And I suppose with excellent timing, seeing as the ads just started. I really don't know what else to do. I definitely need to find more stories to read. But I do have several books of fairy tales, which, should be a given considering the bookstore. But for now, I can't believe we only went an hour. No. What did I get? Who's doing what? Oh, someone gave me a sub. Let's see who was on that we might read into. Let's see. I know Talbot's on. Let me see who's actually under our wonderful new category. Dun, 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 dun. see, writing stream. Game of Tones. Thunderbird writing. Yeah, Thunderbird is writing. I was just curious. I'm reading Count Monte Cristo. I will have to give them a follow, but right now their stream is locking up on my computer, so that won't be any good. Is Talbot reading yet, or is he still writing? Talbot's been on 3 hours. Well, that's over. I think I may go ahead and just call it for the night because it looks like he's going to end too. So, I will go ahead and take this time to say thank you to everyone who came in. I hope you enjoyed the stories and don't feel too bad about my really bad Scottish. I will probably work on that. But for now, I hope you all have pleasant dreams and a good evening and a good weekend. I am on tomorrow night on Papa Penguin stream because we're playing Princesses in Perils. I may do a movie stream on Sunday. I'll figure it out when I get there. But again, thank you everyone for coming in. And I will...
Something's wrong.
You too, Raven.
Heavy thoughts tonight.
Have a good night.
And they aren't of Snow White.